The Old Testament prophets mention in several places Tarshish ships and merchants. Thus it is said about the prophet Jonas. The word of the Eternal is addressed to Jonas, son of Amittai, with these words: "Arise and go to Nineveh, the great city, and shout against it, because her malice reached me." And Jonah rose up to flee to Tarshish, far from the face of the Eternal. He went down to Jaffa and found a ship sailing for Tarshish. He paid for transport and boarded to go with other passengers to Tarshish, far from the face of the Eternal. This tells us that the traffic between the coast of Palestine and the countries under the rule of Rasen was not only commercial but also passenger. Since all the prophets speak only of the ships of Tarshish and not of the ships of other lands, the question arises as to how long Rasens held the thalassocracy on Pelag. Eusebius gives a story of supremacy at sea. The people took over the thalassocracy from Cretans around 1141 BC and held it for 92 years. Then the Pelasgians took it from them and held it for 85 years. It was then taken over by the Thracians and held for 79 years. Rasens are Ludeans, and they are one and the same people as the Pelasgians and Thracians. Together they had held supremacy at sea for more than 250 years without interruption. Then, after a short break, the Frisians and Kuri appeared as thalassocrats for another 106 years. Phrygia was the province of Ludea, and the Kari are the same as Ludeans. Before them, the thalassocrats were Cretans, which is again the same people. It is safe to say that Jews and other people from the Middle East did not differentiate between these tribes when they appeared at the sea. They were all called Tarshish ships. The town of Tartesh was built on a small island that consisted of two tributaries of the river Batis in a mount. One arm of the river was dried up and the city is no longer on the island, but is connected with the mainland on one side. The Batis river was named Wadi al-Kabir by the Arabs, and the modern name Gad al-Kibir was derived from that name. The first Greek to reach Tarshish in Iberia was Coles from Samos in 639 BC. The Greeks noted this as one of the important events. Chetim, Macedonia. The third son of Jovan, Het in Hebrew, in the plural, is called Chetim. We should start first with the very form of the name, since it is written in several ways. In this case, the initial letter of the name Chetim could also be read as Ketim. Since in some cases it is written as Hittim, the following forms are obtained: Chetim and Ketim, Hittim and Kittim. Josephus writes this name in Greek letters, Hetim. We take his way of writing as authoritative. To the extent that Bohardius, an excellent connoisseur of the Hebrew language and everything related to the Holy Scriptures, also says that this is the way of writing and reading in Hebrew language as correct. Since Bohardius, as a great knower of Jewish language and everything that has to do with the Holy Scripture, says that it means that all other types of this writing of the name, at least about the Jewish language, are wrong. In translation 72, the name is spelled as Kati, that is, in the same way as in Odyssey. The Greeks regularly wrote it with the initial letter Ka, and according to them, the Latins with the corresponding letter Ka, that is, S equals K. The Assyrian records mention Hatti, Hatte, and Heti. The Hittites are from the Heths, and Kiliki are Hittites, whereas Ketis, the province of Cilicia, where lived the Chetians, according to Campbell. The Paschal Chronicle derives the Dardanelles from the Troy of Het, and Sites counts the Trojans among the Hittite people. Ancient Pelasgian historians place Chin and Hatay between Persia and India. Assyrians mention Singuri as one Hettic tribe. All northern Italy was conquered from Hittites, as was Oxidarca at Arian, Tsuturuki among the Indian writers, descendants of Susi and Suturuki. Determining the place of the country of the Hettim does not give us any difficulties, since the Old Testament prophets clearly indicate that this is the country of Macedonia. Thus, Maccabee says of Alexander the Great that he came out of the land of Hittites, the land of Hettim. For Emperor Persei, he says that he state Empire Hettim. Charles Rollin writes, Philip and Persei are called emperors of Chatteans. Prophet Daniel identifies Jovan and the Heti. In papyruses found near the Dead Sea, written in time when Egypt was ruled by Lagici and Syria was ruled by Seleucici, stands Emperor Hettim in Misir, Egypt. For Lagici and Hettim from Assyria for Seleucici. And here it is clearly enough. Here it is quite clearly determined that Hettim are Macedonia and the Macedonians, whom the eastern people regularly called Jovan, which is what the prophet Daniel does. Joseph Flavius explains, Hettim is Cyprus. Cyprus was first called Hetima after Hettim, who first ruled that island. Hence the custom among the Jews to call all the islands and all the places on the seashore Hettim. There is a city in Cyprus that is still called Kitios even today in his time. So it seems that the name has something to do with the name Hettim. It is stated in Izorod, the sons of Jovan are Elisha, Tarshish, Hettim and Rodanim. They are inhabited islands of nations. They have inhabited islands of nations according to their countries, according to the language of each of them, according to their families, and according to their people. Joseph Mede says that the Jews called islands of nations only land separated from them by the sea. Therefore, Jeremiah says, cross over the islands of Hettim, but the islands of Hettim are not islands or places surrounded by water, just as Macedonia is not an island. Maccabee says of Alexander the Great that he came out of the land of Hettim. Persei, emperor of Macedonia, he calls Emperor Hettim. This explanation completely agrees with Josephus, and in the end, Hettim is the land of Macedonia, with all the islands and all the shores of Johan's family being meant. That actually means the islands and the northern coast of Pelag, the White and Adriatic seas from Dardanelles to Gibraltar. Some writers meant Italy as Hettim, as does Saint Hieronyme. As for the geography from Izorod, it is correct only in the extent notion of the Hettim, which includes the shores of Jovan family. According to that principle, it is also correct that some writers, as Bohardius states, mean Liburnia, that is the Adriatic coast under Hettim. Ben Gurion, mentioned by Bohardius, by Hettim means Romans. The real meaning of the name Hettim was known to Saint Jerome and Ben Gurion, and certainly to many other writers of ancient times. Otherwise, if they did not know that, they would not put the Romans under the Hettim. In the extended notion of the Hettim, the Romans as lords of Italy and the northern shores of Pelag could enter Hittim, but this happened later after the completion of the Old Testament, in which the Romans are not mentioned. We mentioned in the previous chapter that the ancient Romans considered Samothrace, as the place of their origin before Troy, and that is Thrace, that is Macedonia, the country of Hittim. The Trojans are Dardanians, Macedonians' northern neighbors between whom there is no definite border.